With the Nginx deployment now running, we must expose the pods to the outside world to be able to access them. In other words, we need a means of creating a TCP socket that allows external access into the pods within the cluster. We can expose the pods of Nginx using a service resource in Kubernetes. A service in Kubernetes is a layer 4 construct for pods. It assigns a virtual IP address, better known as a VIP, to a set of pods to provide the cluster with the means of routing to those pods internally. In conjunction with the VIP, the service construct also operates as a load balancer or proxy for the pods themselves. With that, let's create a new service. Much like the deployments, the Tectonic console provides us with the default manifest for the new service as a foundation to start from. This time around, however, we must configure the manifest to map to the Nginx pods from our Nginx deployment. Let's go ahead and make some changes to our manifest. First off, we're going to change its name to Nginx service. We're going to place it in the default namespace. We're going to define some metadata onto which to select the pods. This is the actual label that must match with the Nginx deployment labels that we used previously. This is how the service actually selects the pods to abstract and load balance upon, so they must match. In our Nginx deployment, our labels map the word app to Nginx, so we're going to do the same. Lastly, we're going to open up the port 80 as the target port, as that is the port we set in the Nginx deployment. Before we move forward, we have to examine the type of services that we actually need. Because we want to externally access these pods, we have to have a means of doing so. We can make one last change to the service to help us accomplish that goal. We're going to create a special type of service known as a node port service, and that requires a couple of changes to the manifest. First, its type, and lastly, the actual node port that will be assigned on the nodes for this pod. This is a port in the following range that is acceptable in Kubernetes. I chose 30,100. Before we create this node port type service, however, we must actually allow the range of node ports available, this range, to be used within the networking of our Kubernetes cluster on AWS. To allow the node port range to function, we must modify the security group of our Tectonic controller once and only once with a rule that allows the node port range into our inbound traffic. Note, the Tectonic controller also runs the kubelet, as this is an inherent part of Tectonic's self-driving infrastructure. Therefore, any node ports opened up in the cluster are also opened up in the controller. Let's actually go ahead and open up these ports. We're going to go back to our AWS console, head down to EC2, ensure that we are in the right region, edit the security groups, locate the security group from the controller, check out its inbound traffic, and we're going to edit it. We're going to add a custom rule that allows our node port range. Now save. With that, let's actually finish creating the service. We can check out the overview and see that the service is actually operating on port 30,100 for all nodes and the pods it is abstracting are the following, which are in fact the same pods from our Nginx deployment. In Tectonic, only the Tectonic controller has a publicly accessible IP address by default. We can inspect that by checking out the console and going to EC2. Inspecting our running instances, and seeing that we have 2 workers, a single controller, and an etcd node, where only the controller has a public IP. This is going to be the public IP in conjunction with the node port that will ultimately allow us to route to our Nginx pods. So let's test this all out. I'm going to copy this IP. I'm going to visit my browser at port 30100, and there we have it. The Nginx server is being served. As you can see, we now have a set of running Nginx pods exposed to the outside world running on Tectonic. To find out more information, please visit coreos.com/tectonic, as well as kubernetes.io. Thanks.